It's a super duper Tuesday here in the Freedom Hut, my friends. The Democrats have fallen in line in the establishment behind Biden. Bernie Sanders looking like he could be the subject of an anti-Bernie coup, according to the president. Plus, what happened to Chris Matthews? He dropped the mic on his show, and we've got updates on coronavirus, that and more coming up.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
We hold these truths to be fourscore and something, blah-blah-blah, etc., etc. Call me some guy, to start off a very famous novel. You know, there's just some things that most people know that. Oh, by the way, welcome to the Buck Sexton Show. I got so caught up in Sleepy Joe that I forgot for a second what we were doing here. That was one of my favorites of all time. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created by the, the thing. The thing that they're created by. 7 little chipmunks sitting on a branch, eating a lot of acorns on my uncle's ranch. Step into my office, Joe Biden says. Yep, that's who the Democrats want to put in charge of the country because he's so much smarter and wiser and has so much more to offer than Donald Trump, they tell us. Yep, this is where we are here on Super Duper Tuesday. It's super. Going to be quite a day, folks. We're going to see by the end of it whether Bernie or Biden is the presumptive Democrat nominee. I emphasize presumptive because who knows at this point. And yes, I know, before some of you point out, Buck, you've been saying it won't be Biden, and now the betting odds have it that it will be Biden. But, folks, at least I'll own up to it. Everyone thought they learned a lesson from 2016, which is don't make any predictions. The lesson I learned from 2016 is, make predictions. Everyone gets them wrong. Everybody's wrong sometimes. So, but I might not be wrong. I still hold out hope that Biden won't be the nominee just so I'll be right. And I can't imagine that 2016, that the 2020 election is anything other than essentially a replay of the 2016 election, except you've had, we'll see where the economy is. There's legitimate concern about it right now. I'm not as concerned as a lot of other people. I'll tell you this, man. I've been buying the dip, as they say. I think that this is this crisis right now, in terms of the fear. It's one thing to take something seriously, right? It's another thing to be terrified because of it. I think that there's a lot of reason that the media is pushing this to be even worse in our minds than it will be in reality. People are on this. We understand this. My big contention here is that the number of cases, the reason there are two reasons we're so scared about coronavirus right now. And I know I wanted to do more politics right now than coronavirus, but just the two reasons people are more scared about coronavirus than they would be about the flu, even though the flu has killed over 10,000 people and caused 180,000 hospitalizations in America this flu season. I think it's important to have that as a baseline of our understanding of disease and the risk that it poses for the public, particularly at-risk populations, the elderly, immunosuppressed, and the very young. Because if, let's say, coronavirus gets to the point where there are a few thousand people who die this season from coronavirus, which I think is highly possible, let's keep in mind that that's not a pandemic of world-changing proportions that's going to shatter the U.S. economy. And so there's the concern. The concern right now is being heightened because of the mortality fear and the fact that we don't know as much about this. The mortality fear, I think, is not nearly as I think we're going to find out there are many more cases than we realize. And so that denominator for the fraction of mortality, how many people have died as a result of this disease versus how many people have contracted the disease, I think the denominator is going to be much bigger, or is much, even if we never really figure it out, especially given that there's a long incubation period and people don't show symptoms over that period. And some people have very mild or even asymptomatic cases. Well, how are we going to know how many people have come into contact with this if there are any asymptomatic cases of it? So that's where I think this is going. I know I just told you before, predictions, everybody's got one, but I don't think there's any cause for the cause for alarm. There's cause for preparation and vigilance. Those are not the same thing. Okay, but back to Joe Biden. All men created equal by, the thing. Yeah, we know, Joe. The question is, do you know, Joe Biden? And then he had another great one here. This is just, remember that the Biden gaffes are nothing new. And maybe for those of us who think that he's too old, and I do see some conservatives that are claiming publicly, they think that this is the onset of dementia or senility. Keep in mind, Biden has been saying a lot of very dumb stuff for a very long time. And this is nothing really new for him. It's just the way that this was reported on in the past was when he was the vice president for Obama, it was, oh, it's Uncle Joe. He's just being Joe. They had this way of making it all seem almost affable that Biden was often sounded like a bumbling fool. So that was what they did. They covered for him during the Obama years whenever he said something particularly dumb. And we all remember the, put y'all back in chains comment he made. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you go, whoa, Joe Biden, what are you doing here? But here's another example of exactly that. Producer Mark, play clip 4, please.
Look, tomorrow's Superstar Tuesday, and I want to thank you all. I tell you what, I'm rushing ahead, aren't I?
Tomorrow's Super Thursday Tuesday. Now, to be fair, that's just a stumble. Okay, see, I'll call it like it is, balls and strikes. That's not some of the other stuff we've seen where he'll say 150 million people have died from gun violence in 10 years in this country. And he says it. And it's like he doesn't know what he's saying. It's like he's memorized lines and doesn't actually understand what he's saying. That's a stumble that we could all make. But it's just kind of funny that Biden is super duper Thursday Tuesday. Because, it's made by the thing that's out there that it was made by. So now we go into what's really happening today on Super Tuesday. What is going on before our very eyes? President Trump referred to this as an anti-Bernie coup. You have to note the way that these Democrat candidates, they fall in line with 19th century Prussian infantry precision. They do exactly what they are being told to do by the establishment. Democrats love to talk about how, they're a big party with all these ideas and how, radical some of their positions are, especially now, and how they're, that they're willing to hear out their own members and all this stuff. But no, actually, there's like this power apparatus that they're not going to allow anybody else to seize that. The whole AOC wing and all this. Now, maybe they won't be successful, but they are actively trying to suppress the up-and-coming left within the Democratic Party now. The Pelosi-Schumer wing of the Democrats, which is the leadership and the establishment echelon of the Democratic Party, they plan to keep this exactly as it is as long as they can. And then that's how you have Klobuchar, Buttigieg, Steyer. I mean, Steyer was... Did you see the dancing video? That's all you need to know. It's like, woo, man. But Klobuchar dropped out yesterday, I think right after I did this show. And Buttigieg dropped out before her. And some of them now have already gone forward to give their endorsements. Buttigieg and Klobuchar have already come out to endorse Joe Biden. That's a very quick turnaround here. Right before Super Tuesday, wouldn't you think if you were one of these candidates, you'd spend all this money, other people's money, with the exception of Bloomberg, and we'll get to Mayor Mike in a minute. Wouldn't you think that you'd want to see how you do on Super Tuesday? No. Look, I'm almost envious of the way the Democrats, like the Borg from the Star Trek series, they all act as one when power is at stake. They are like cyborgs that are all running off the same algorithm, an algorithm determined by a lust for power and the abandonment of principle at the first sign of it being any trouble. So that part of it, I do say Republicans have something to learn here. Areas where Republicans can learn from Democrats. They take care of their ideological soldiers. Oh, remember Marie Yovanovitch? Oh, it's terrible. She had to leave the State Department because she felt like in the Trump era she was blah, 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 unwelcome. 7-figure book deal. Carnegie Endowment for International Peace picks her up, gives her some super cushy position. I'm sure she's making about, I know think tanks. I used to work at think tanks. She's making $250K to just like show up to some nice office in a fancy building that's a nonprofit and do nothing really. Go to long lunches and go to some speeches when she feels like it. Oh, Marie Yovanovitch, we're hollowing out the civil service. The Democrats take care of their people. They do. Much better than conservatives. We're all, because our island of, especially in media and, our island is so much smaller that we're often at each other's throats. And when somebody else gets voted off the island, a lot of conservatives are like, meh, too bad for that person. Yeah, I guess, to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs, and those conservatives got to get broken. We do not take care of our own, and we have defectors when it really counts. We have John McCain's, we have Mitt Romney's, we have people that turn on the party at the absolute most opportune moment for the opposition. Democrats don't have that. They don't. Just think of it. When does that happen? I'm sure somebody could look up some point in history or time, but didn't happen with Obamacare. Didn't happen with any of the major political controversies of the Trump administration. The Democrats are all together. The only exceptions I would note are when you have a Democrat who really should be a Republican, but a Democrat who's in a very red state will be allowed to break ranks when it doesn't matter. So it's a show vote. That's the only. So don't tell me about like Manchin with Kavanaugh, for example. Manchin in West Virginia was allowed by the party establishment to vote to keep Kavanaugh because at that point it was already clear that it was going Kavanaugh's way, and 70% of West Virginians wanted Kavanaugh to be confirmed. So they don't want to give up that Senate seat, and they knew. So that's a different thing. But when it really matters, Democrats are locked and loaded on the same side, and Republicans are people who are like, oh, I stand on principle. I don't like Trump's mean tweet. It was really mean, that tweet he put out. Well, what about the policy that will affect hundreds of millions of your fellow Americans? Doesn't that matter more? No, the tweet. Never Trump. Hashtag never Trump. Okay, that's great. Good job. So now we have the establishment versus Bernie. Bernie's going to run the table in California, he's going to do very, very well in California. He's going to beat Biden in Texas. Those are the states with the biggest delegate hauls. He's going to struggle in the South and the Southeast. He's hoping to do really well in the big blue states. Well, I would note that you'd think that the guy who wins California, if you're a Democrat, shouldn't that pretty much be the Democrat nominee? Isn't that the best bellwether of anything in a sense? But we'll see what they end up doing here. It's very likely that nobody will get more than half of the overall Democrat delegates going into the convention, which does mean that it's going to be an interesting DNC convention this July in Milwaukee. I don't think it'll be quite what it was in 1968 in Chicago. Violence in the streets, and that was a different time. But it's going to be pretty crazy because crazy Bernie fans are not going to like it. They're going to feel like he's gotten this stolen from him for the second time. And then you look at the way that the party has been able to just call upon the discipline of other Democrats to step aside and clear the lane for Biden. That's what they are doing. And the takeaway for Democrats is, oh, we learned the lesson of 2016 Trump. It's like, what? The lesson of Trump in 2016 was let the process play out, and whoever the person that wins can then possibly unite the entire party behind him, which Trump has done, and enact policies that the party has wanted for a very long time and that it has consistently supported. So that's no. Democrats are doing the opposite of what Republicans did in 2016. Democrats are having the apparatus come in and clear out the rest of the field so that Biden has a better shot. This would have been like if Kasich and Rubio and whoever else early on had bailed so that Ted Cruz had a better shot against Donald Trump. I do think that would have, we can't run that experiment now. Certainly would have made things a lot easier for Ted, who does look much better with a beard. He respects my beard. I respect his beard. I think we both made good choices there. But I think that Ted realized he had a very crowded field, and that was a difficult environment when you had such a solid base of Trump support early on. And Trump support now, of course, is greatly expanded by the success of the administration. So Democrats think that they just think Trump is bad. Therefore, the lesson that they take is, oh, wow, we can't allow what happened to the Republican Party to happen to us. We got to stop Bernie. It's like, wait, but we don't think Trump is bad. So they're taking the wrong lesson from it. They're taking the wrong lesson from this. And we see them telling their members, you got to let sleepy Joe Biden get a leg up here on Bernie Sanders. That's what has to happen.
Politics at its best is more than policy. It's soulcraft. And so it's fitting that I am joining to support a campaign that speaks so often about the soul of this nation. I don't believe the world is divided up into people who are all good and people who are all bad. Yeah. I don't believe that how you voted in the past makes you good or bad. I believe that each of us can have good things and bad things brought out of us. And that's why leadership is so important. I'm looking for a leader. I'm looking for a president who will draw out what is best in each of us. And I'm encouraging everybody who is part of my campaign to join me because we have found that leader in Vice President, soon to be President, Joe Biden.
Exactly as the DNC would want him to say it. Got to give Joe Biden credit. After a fourth place finish in, Iowa, fifth place finish in New Hampshire. I mean, dismal stuff early on. He knew that he's the pick of the media. He's the pick of the people that are behind the scenes at the DNC. A return to Obamaism, a return to a national normal. The narrative is there. It's in place. All Joe Biden has to do is show up. He can be a buffoon. He can sound like a moron. Nobody cares. The people that want Joe Biden, they just want a vessel for the Democratic Party and its power. It doesn't matter who it is. And Joe has, the story and the resume that they want. The resume just being that he was Obama's vice president for 8 years and a senator forever. And is now super rich. Never really created a product, but super rich anyway. And Mayor Pete's not the only one. We got some other endorsements from recently former Democrat nominees.
It is up to us, all of us, to put our country back together, to heal this country, and then to build something even greater. I believe we can do this together. And that is why today I am ending my campaign and endorsing Joe Biden for president.
Ending right before Super Tuesday? Only reason to do this if you're a candidate is to help Joe Biden. That's the only reason. You've already spent the money. You've done the fundraising. You've done the organizing. You got your campaign volunteers out there. There's actually some pretty sad photos making the rounds on social media of Klobuchar volunteers who were getting ready to do a rally for her. And then they got the word. I'm sure they got the word maybe from an email from someone in the campaign, but they might have just seen it on the news. Who knows that Klobuchar is done, and they were walking up to garbage cans and throwing out their signs and stuff. Womp, womp. You got to figure, why not just see how you do on Super Tuesday and then pull up? Well, because people that the entire Hillary Clinton apparatus out there, the DNC is still they're still very enthralled to Hillary. Don't think they're not. Obama's the most popular Democrat in the country still. But Hillary is really the most connected Democrat still, because she can't. I actually think Obama's pretty happy making tens of millions of dollars and everywhere he, being able to hang out with any celebrity he wants. Everywhere he goes, people think he's amazing. Like, I think he likes that. Hillary Obama got the big job. Hillary never got the big job. So she still has that fire to be connected and to want to play. I'd say she wants to play Kingmaker, but she really wants to play Queenmaker. Because we know that if she had an opportunity, and you are going to see, I think, people that will be talking more about Hillary Clinton vice president under Joe Biden. I know it's crazy, but people will talk about that. And say, well, she's old, he's old. Apparently age doesn't matter anymore. Apparently no one really cares that Joe Biden is already at the upper ceiling, I think, of U.S. life expectancy, and we're asking him to be president of the United States for 8 years. That's a big ask for somebody of those years. But remember, Biden is the youngest of the male Democrat presidential contenders at this point. He is younger than Bloomberg and Bernie. Bernie is basically 80 years old and just had a heart attack this year or in the last 12 months. And we're told, yeah, he's up for this. And he won't release his medical records. And we're told, yeah, he's up for this. Sure he is, guys. Democrats will say whatever they have to say at this point. Anything but Trump, anyone but Trump. That's the idea. Oh, by the way, you also have some people that you haven't heard from in a little while who just want you to know that Biden is going to fill the country's hearts with his heart because he's got so much heart and he wants to just bring us all together and give a really intense if I was running a grunge band in the 90s and then I was going to be a political candidate, who would I be? Oh, we all know who you'd be. Play clip 21, producer Mark. He's back in the mix.
On behalf of every one of the 254 counties of this great state, we welcome Dr. Jill Biden and Vice President Joe Biden, el próximo presidente de los Estados Unidos, aquí con nosotros este momento. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow, March 3rd, 2020, I will be casting my ballot for Joe Biden.
Beto's back, everybody. He's casting his vote for Joe Biden. Yeah. Wild Stallions. He does remind me of Keanu a little bit back in the day. I'm kind of a Keanu fan. I actually think the John Wick movies are they're ridiculous but entertaining. I like them. So we got a whole bunch of Democrats lined up here in support of Joe Biden right at the critical moment to resurrect his flailing campaign. The Bernie people have got to be like, what the heck is going on here? Because not only do you have these prominent Democrats plus Beto, not only do you have them coming forward to lend their support to Joe Biden, you also have them going out of their way to make sure that everybody knows that Bernie is not a good idea. Here's Amy Klobuchar on that front. Play 22, please.
I'm friends of Bernie. We came in together, but as I said many times on the debate stage, I don't think we should have a socialist heading up our ticket. And I think we have to have someone, as one prominent Democrat said, who is actually listening to where the American people are. That prominent Democrat was Barack Obama. He said it a few months ago, that we should pay attention to where they are. I don't think they want to kick 149 million Americans off their current health insurance.
They're all going in against Bernie. Isn't it so interesting how many of these candidates, now Klobuchar is not one of them, but some of these candidates, Beto O'Rourke, they were going hard left in the primary, which meant they were going closer and closer to Bernie to try to get traction for themselves. But then when all's said and done, when it's time to cast their votes and throw their support behind someone, guess what? They go with the pick of the establishment. They go with the ultimate of the current field, the ultimate DC insider, Joe Biden. Not surprised. We shouldn't be surprised at all by this. And running around saying that Bernie Sanders is a socialist, which he is. I'll note that in the last few weeks, you'll see people who have been on TV saying, oh, Bernie Sanders is not really a socialist. You know, he's just got some socialist morals and ethics, but he's not like a socialist when it comes to the economy. They were trying to shift things a little bit so that if they ended up being stuck with Bernie, they weren't going to have to just outright defend a socialist all the time, although it wasn't going to work because we were going to have, Trump was going to be like, oh, yeah, he's a socialist. He's a socialist. But they were trying that. Now they're walking away from it. And they're trashing. They're not just supporting Biden. They're going specifically after Bernie publicly, which I think is a very telling thing that they're perhaps going to get something out of this. President Trump himself raised this at a rally as a possibility. The quid, the pro, and the quo. What is it here? Play it, producer Mark. 16.
It's rigged against Bernie, but maybe he'll pull it through. It was rigged against me 4 years ago, and I pulled it through. I think it's rigged against Bernie. You see what's happening with Klobuchar. I heard something happened there, and
Buttigieg. So do you think that will change?
yeah. Well, Buttigieg just went out and said something, and probably they'll say, "Hey, look, if I win, I'll put you in the administration." That's called quid pro quo, right? Quid pro quo. And they probably said, "Hey, listen, if I win, I'll give you an endorsement, but will you take me in the administration?" Now, I'm sure nothing like that has ever happened, right? But that's the way it seems to go. But no, it's rigged against Bernie. There's no question about it. Sounds like it's a little bit unfair.
Does sound a little bit unfair, doesn't it? But Democrats don't care about fair process. They want a result that puts their people, their ideas in a position of power so they can have the implementation of the agenda that they want. It doesn't matter how they get there, as we know. And if they don't get there, they'll claim the process was rigged against them and was unfair. So that there are no rules that Democrats respect. There's only an outcome that they demand. If they don't get that outcome, they're going to be particularly upset about things. You also got somebody else in the mix, though. A champion arises. Mayor Bloomberg, who's spent up to $500 million, I believe, at this point. To spend $500 million and have to abandon your candidacy after Super Tuesday would seem to be quite an... See, I like this because it's really an experiment that tests this story that you hear from people all the time. Democrats love to say money in our elections. They talk about Citizens. They don't even know the Citizens United case. They don't know what it was about. They don't know what it would have banned if the Obama government had gotten its way. But they just, money in politics. Republicans are fat cats and corporations and money. This is just, it's sloganeering. They might as well be saying, Dick Cheney, Halliburton. It's brainless, mindless stuff. If Mike Bloomberg spends $500 million and does not become even a really viable candidate on the Democrat side at that point, doesn't that then prove that it's not just money? So can we stop hearing stupid pundits and whiny Democrat politicians always think, the Republicans, money in politics, special interest? They have an ultra-billionaire on the left trying to buy his way into the presidency as much as one can. And the point is, you can't buy your way into the presidency. People vote. They like you, they don't. That's it. Doesn't matter how much money you're throwing around. You can't actually do it. And how is it's so tough with all these B's. Biden, Bernie, Bloomberg, they get mixed up in my head sometimes. Bloomberg is out there trying to make a last stand here, and he's going after his opponents, understandably. And he, for example, says what everybody should know at this point. I mean, this should be entirely unsurprising. And yet, if you said this to, say, like the group that I spoke to out in California on Bill Maher's show, I did say that Bernie was basically crazy. And they're like, no, he's not, and he's amazing. And it's like, no, Bernie's crazy, okay? His ideas are irresponsible. His ideas would not work. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's dumb. This is dumb Marxist crap from a guy who's never done anything of any importance in his life other than spew this stuff that when you hear it in college, intelligent people go, yeah, that sounds interesting. It's not how the real world works. Bernie never got to the real world understanding of things. Bernie has always been continuing on in this fantasy, and Bloomberg, as much as he's been annoying me lately, and I used to be somebody that, I didn't like Bloomberg on stuff. He's terrible on guns. He's bad on the nanny state, but I always thought of him as a competent administrator and a pretty smart guy. He's been annoying me lately, so he's been losing points And that's just a New York thing. Just thought he was a good, and I technically worked for him at one point, although he would not know me. It's not like I worked in his office or anything. But here's what he says about Sanders, and I think it's important that Democrats hear this. Play clip 5.
You have to convince a Democratic convention not to go with Bernie Sanders and to go with you.
That you would have to do that. That is correct.
But how do you do that to a Democratic?
You say to them that, number one, Sanders cannot get elected in this country because he cannot bring over moderates from the other side. He won't even keep all the moderates on the Democratic side. Some will go over to Trump. And so he's not electable. And number two, his ideas are crazy. I mean, his plan on health insurance would be triple our total debt. He would triple our total debt. Right now, this country owes $20 trillion. We're going to add another trillion to it this year because we're running a deficit. His health care plan would add 20 or 30, and I've heard a number, $40 trillion more over 10 years. We just can't afford that, and the public doesn't want that kind of change.
Notice how he understands the numbers. Bernie Sanders pretends the numbers don't matter. Sanders keeps telling people they'll get more than what they pay. Well, the only way that could be possible would be if, and it's, by the way, that's never going to be true, but even theoretically, it would mean that you'd have to be willing to just add trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in the national debt. And the problem, I mean, the nightmare scenario for the American economy, for our financial system, is we reach that point where people no longer believe in the government's ability to pay the debts that it has, where you have a rise of interest rates. I know they just cut rates in response to coronavirus, but you have a rise of interest rates that occurs. And if we lose our position as the global reserve currency, we're dealing in a very different global economy at that point, and America is not going to be in this position of dominance. And we might go through some very, very painful years, perhaps even a painful decade or two as a result of it. It'll be the great reset that many still, you can see from Dr. Ron Paul, among others. They've been warning that we're heading toward this. Bernie Sanders, it's like we're on a boat that's going to go over the waterfall, and Bernie Sanders is in that rowboat, and he's like, let's go faster, as quick as possible over the edge. That's his economic plan. It's insane. And Bloomberg is right, and he knows that. Yet it's Bloomberg the guy who if you speak sense in this Democratic Party today, if you're honest about the realities of the government's ability to pay for this or that, if you know what is realistic and what's not, that's a liability. That's a problem. Democrats want two things: promises that there's no way they're going to be kept, and there's certainly not going to be anything near what they say they will be if they do try to keep them, and hatred of Trump. That's all it is. That is what the Democratic Party offers you. There's nothing else that is better. There's Trump hatred, and there's crazy ideas like Crazy Bernie has that aren't going to be fulfilled. What is Joe? Here's a fun question. What does Joe Biden even stand for? I stand for, this country I love, and, the thing and the place, and, my legs with the blonde hair and corn pop. What does Joe Biden stand for? He stands for whatever he has to stand for at any point in time to get reelected or get elected. That's what Joe Biden stands for. He is, in a sense, the quintessential politician, the ultimate politician. It's just, what do you need me to be? That's what does the Democrat Party need me to be? That's what I'll be. When has he ever stood against the Democratic Party on anything? When has he taken a contrarian view? When has the guy had an original thought? But yeah, sure, let's make him president.
We got through everything we got through. They gave us the Mueller hoax. They gave us the Russia crap. They gave us the one phone call that was a perfect phone call. Oh, let's get him out of office for that phone call. But the Republicans stuck together, except Romney, of course, right? Low life. Except Romney, they stuck together. And even him, I got half a vote, so, See, I was thinking, because he did actually vote one part. He couldn't do it all, because he wanted to get some nice free publicity for himself.
Yeah, that Romney vote, everybody. Well, what really was the lesson there? The lesson was that humility, even from those of us who follow politics very, very closely, is necessary in this game, because I thought Mitt Romney, based on what I could see, I didn't know him. I've actually never interviewed Mitt. Mitt struck me as an honorable guy who wanted to do the right thing, and he fooled a lot of people because Mitt Romney went out like a punk on that whole Trump situation. He really did, like a jerk.